Welcome back to another Djinn diary. It's been a tough month, everything seems to be falling out of place. Nothing feels like it's going in the right direction. My mental states right now is filled with dark thoughts. I have put up a lot of old stuff around the house for sale. Putting together old collections to see if it has any value, also for sale to scrap by. Next week will be the last check I receive from unemployment, and job hunting have been hopeless. Hundreds of application and zero call for interview. I haven't had a good sleep in a while, so I started taking meds to help with sleeping. Reading scary stories is my only escape so far. It is spooky season, so I'll be sharing a lot of Halloween stories. This is part 3 of the Halloween series. Be sure to check out the channel for other spooky stories. Story 1. A walk home on Halloween. I had just moved into my flat in Raynes Park, southwest London, and was still relatively unfamiliar with the area. Now, my current bosses and supervisors are well aware that I am struggling with the unreliable nature of southwest trains, and as a result, my timekeeping for getting to work has been less than perfect. I had hoped to solve this issue by buying a bicycle. Unfortunately, London's unpredictable weather and my own laziness often conspire to push me back onto the trains for my commute. While some people know that the trains prevent me from arriving at work on time, not many are aware of the trouble I face when returning home. Often, I find myself stranded at Clapham Junction with no train heading back to Raynes Park. In such cases, I have to take a bus to Wimbledon Common and then walk the remaining 3 miles. It's actually quite a pleasant walk, given that London doesn't have many hills, and if you stroll along the Ridgeway, you can occasionally catch a nice view. Sure, it's of Croydon, but it's still a decent view. To call Wimbledon Village privileged would be an understatement. The driveways are filled with sports cars and luxury vehicles. So, as you might guess, my walks home are typically uneventful. I hardly ever see anyone, except for the occasional older couple, perhaps returning from a dinner party, or someone out walking their dog. The neighborhood is quiet, and it settles in early. That night was shaping up to be no different. I got off the bus at the War Memorial, walked through the village center, and turned onto the Ridgeway. My phone had died somewhere between Wandsworth and Southfields, leaving me to complete the walk without music. This always made the walk seem longer. To pass the time, I played my usual game of looking at the houses and guessing what kind of people lived in them. Fast car? Probably business types. SUV with toys in the yard? Likely a larger family. That sort of thing. As I played my game, I decided to stop for a cigarette. While searching for my lighter and looking around, I noticed I wasn't alone on the street. This was unusual but not alarming. What was strange was that the person I saw didn't fit the type I was used to seeing. It was a young girl, maybe drunk or tired. I lit my cigarette and paused briefly, wondering if she needed help, perhaps someone to call for her. That's when I realized she was crying. I started walking toward her to check if she was okay. She stopped walking immediately, freezing in place. I noticed she was dressed in some sort of Halloween costume, a schoolgirl outfit, to be exact. As I got closer, I realized she was around 15 or 16 years old. Her face was deathly white, and her makeup looked either professionally done or the result of hours of preparation. I assumed her friends had probably made fun of her costume, leading her to run away from whatever party she'd been at, upset and possibly drunk. I started to feel uneasy as I noticed she was staring directly at me. In a city as large as London, there's an unspoken rule to avoid eye contact with strangers. I began to think she might be under the influence of something more than alcohol, so I approached more cautiously, stopping about 4 or 5 feet away. "Are you okay? You seem upset. Are you in any trouble?" No response, just that unblinking stare. Had a bit too much to drink? Maybe some smoke? I know the signs of hallucinogens. Still nothing. Do you need a taxi? Do you remember where you live? At that, she started crying again, this time, wailing. The sound was raw, filled with despair, and I actually flinched. She was teetering on the edge of hysteria, maybe even stepping over the line. I was stunned, torn between wanting to comfort her and the urge to run. I weakly asked, "Why are you crying?" Somehow, she heard me through her sobs and raised her eyes to mine. Very softly, she said,
"Because you're going to die."
I've experienced death firsthand more than once, and those encounters have given me plenty to reflect on. I've made peace with my mortality. It occurred to me that maybe this girl had recently lost someone close to her, and she was grappling with the same dark realizations that many of us do when confronted with death. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that death is simply part of life. But all I managed was a quiet, "I know." Her response caught me off guard. She looked almost angry and said,
"You are going to die, and he is going to kill you."
Alarms went off in my head. I suddenly felt threatened. Right then, I decided it was no longer my job to talk her down from whatever high she was on. Hadn't the great Hunter S. Thompson himself warned us about underestimating the power of drugs? "Good luck," I said, turning and walking away. After about 5 steps, I glanced back. She was still standing there, her head down, audibly sobbing. I quickened my pace and soon disappeared around a bend in the road, leaving her out of sight. I was left feeling uneasy. I remember trying to put my headphones back in and listen to music, only to realize my phone was still dead. I had about 2 miles to go before getting home, but I felt confident I could walk it in under 20 minutes at the pace I was going. It was only 2 minutes later when I first heard the shouting. It was a man's voice, filled with an excruciating sense of malice and rage.
"I am coming for you."
I couldn't tell exactly where the voice came from, but it sounded like he was a bit behind me, possibly near where the girl had been. It dawned on me that this was probably some Halloween prank. Still, I didn't slow down, even though I figured this was the moment I was supposed to get scared and run. I refused to play along. The man shouted again, this time much closer. Now the voice seemed too close behind me. At that volume, I should have seen him, but I was still alone on the street. I was walking quickly, so for him to catch up, he must have been running, but I didn't hear any footsteps. There had to be more than one prankster, hidden along the street. Deciding to be a poor sport, I cut off the main road and took Thornton Road by the Swan Pub. I hate to admit it, but their joke had rattled me, and I wasn't curious enough to find out what else they had planned. I had just passed the second house when I heard that horrible voice again.
"You're going to die."
This time the voice seemed to come from the entrance to the street, less than 30 yards away. Maybe it was their last attempt to scare me before I disappeared into the darker side streets. Since those streets were even darker, I saw no shame in jogging down the hill. It might have all been a joke, but the intensity of the shouting left me wondering if I was dealing with something more dangerous. True, it would have been wild to be part of the most elaborate mugging ever, but that voice was too full of genuine hatred. I didn't want to meet whoever was behind it. As I reached the curve where Thornton Road becomes King Avenue, I suddenly heard another scream.
"I will kill you."
This time the voice, yes, the same one, seemed to be right beside me. He had to be hidden behind a fence or inside one of the houses. It felt like I had walked right into their trap. Pride gone, I broke into a full sprint, running fast and then faster downhill. Panic was setting in. My mind was playing tricks on me, making it seem like the voice was everywhere, yelling, screaming, surrounding me. Ahead was Whirlpool Road, the main road, well lit and busy. I could catch a cab and be home in minutes, but the rage in that voice felt inescapable.
"I hate you, you coward."
Die!
Every second, the voice seemed louder, and I could feel its venom in the air around me. My adrenaline was spiking, and I admit I was terrified. It felt like I was both running from and into that madness. The voice's words hit me like gusts of hot wind, full of fury and hate. I couldn't take it anymore. That voice filled me with the same intense anger. Was I the one shouting? I was a victim, yet I felt an urge to lash out at whoever was tormenting me. I could feel the hatred.
"Time to die, coward. I hate you."
I had enough. In one quick moment, I decided to stop running, light a cigarette, and wait for these people to reveal themselves. Whatever happened, I needed answers. And a smoke. I stopped and turned around. A car zoomed past, honking as it went. It raced by the very spot I would have reached if I hadn't stopped when I did. I felt the rush of air brush the back of my head as the car sped by. In my blind panic, I had run off the sidewalk and into the street. If I hadn't stopped, I would have been hit. I looked back up the road I had just run down. Darkness. Silence. Whoever had been yelling was gone. I lit my cigarette and took a few minutes to calm down. Smoking saved my life that night. After that, I went home and nothing else happened. But as I stood there, calming down from the panic and adrenaline, I thought I heard a soft whisper. Maybe it was just my imagination, but I thought I heard a girl's voice say quietly,
Not such a coward after all.
"Subscribe."